The forest whispered in shades of silver and deep green, leaves trembling under the touch of a soft wind that carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. Amid the towering oaks and twisted vines, a small clearing glimmered with the light of the setting sun. There, the Alpha King's pups tumbled and rolled on the mossy ground, their soft fur catching the golden rays like strands of sunlight. At the edge of the clearing, a young woman knelt, laughing quietly as she coaxed a shy pup from beneath a gnarled root. Her hands were gentle but firm, her touch infused with warmth and patience. She had the kind of presence that made the world seem softer, calmer. Even in a kingdom where fear and power ruled every heart. "Come on, little one," she whispered, coaxing the smallest pup to crawl toward her. "You can do it." "I'll be right here." The pup wobbled uncertainly before finally reaching her, curling into her lap with a soft whine. The woman smiled, brushing the fur from its eyes, her heart lifting with a joy she had not known in a long time. Around them, the other pups yipped and played, chasing each other in circles, tumbling over roots, and each other in wild delight. But beyond the warmth of this small moment, the forest held a tension that not even the sunlight could soothe. Whispers rustled through the trees, carried by servants and attendants preparing for the annual mating ceremony, a tradition that bound the kingdom together, where alliances were formed, loyalties tested, and the Alpha King's power reaffirmed. The young woman knew little of the politics that governed the court, nor did she care. Here, among the pups, she was free. She did not know that each tender gesture, each playful laugh, had not gone unnoticed. From the shadows of the tall pines, the Alpha King watched. His presence was like a storm held in stillness, powerful, commanding, yet veiled with a certain sadness that made the air tremble in his wake. His dark eyes, sharp and observing, lingered on the woman as she laughed, completely unaware of his gaze. It had been many years since anyone had made him feel this way, since someone had drawn out the part of him that still longed for warmth and connection. Most feared him, bowed to him, or sought to use him. Yet this woman, with her simple kindness and fearless attention to creatures smaller than herself, stirred something he had long thought buried. He stepped closer, the dry leaves crunching softly under his boots. Yet she did not notice him. The pups, however, lifted their heads in alert, whimpering and wagging tails, recognizing his presence, even if she did not. "Careful," he said softly, his voice low and smooth, carrying authority without harshness. "Do not tire yourself with them." She jumped slightly, her hands frozen in midair. For a moment, her eyes met his, and she felt a pull, a strange and sudden recognition. Though she had never seen him before. He was taller than any man she had known, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell like a shadow over his intense eyes. His presence was heavy, like a storm that could break at any moment, yet oddly protective. I was just helping them," she said, trying to sound casual. Her voice trembled slightly. Not out of fear, but out of awe. He inclined his head, studying her carefully. "These pups, they trust you." His tone was almost a question, but there was a hint of admiration beneath it. "That is rare. Most are wary of strangers, especially near the ceremony." She glanced at the pups, who now clustered around her, tails wagging and paws reaching for her hands. I like them," she said softly. "I think they need someone gentle. Someone who cares." The Alpha King's eyes softened for the briefest moment, a shadow of something long lost passing over his face. But duty was never far, and the looming presence of the mating ceremony reminded him of the cold reality of his position. Soon, every eye in the kingdom would be upon him, expecting obedience, power, and control. Love and tenderness were luxuries he could not afford. Yet here, in the midst of this small, sunlit clearing, he felt a pull he could not ignore. The woman laughed as a pup nuzzled her hand. And in that laugh was a freedom he had not known for decades, a reminder that the world could still hold joy. "I am the Alpha King," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm, as if testing her reaction. "You are aware of the ceremony tomorrow?" She nodded, her hands still resting on the pup's fur. "I know." The court is preparing. I hear the horns and chants sometimes. But I'm not part of that world. His gaze sharpened. And yet you come here. To them. You do not fear what others might think, nor the dangers that come with proximity to me. That is unusual. She met his eyes, unflinching. I do not fear. They are innocent, and they deserve someone who is kind. A flicker of something unspoken passed between them. A silent understanding of courage, of heart, of quiet defiance, in the face of a harsh world. The Alpha King had ruled with iron, feared for his power, and isolated by his own authority. Yet here, beside this woman and her tiny charges, he felt a warmth that unsettled him, yet tempted him beyond reason. But the world outside the clearing was waiting. Servants hurried along stone paths, nobles whispered in corridors, and the air crackled with anticipation for the ceremony that would bind alliances, choose mates, and solidify the Alpha King's rule. None of this mattered here, in the golden light and the laughter of innocent pups. Yet it pressed upon them both. A silent threat that time was short. The woman finally stood, brushing her hands on her skirt, her eyes lingering on the Alpha King. I should go. I don't want to cause trouble. The court. They might not like me being here. He shook his head slightly, almost imperceptibly. You do not understand. It is not trouble you bring. It is something far more dangerous. Curiosity, loyalty, courage. Qualities that could unsettle the order of this kingdom. She frowned, unsure of the meaning behind his words. I don't wish to unsettle anything. I care for them. A shadow crossed his face, one of conflict and burden. Caring is a dangerous thing in my world. Those who care can be used, hurt, or destroyed. Yet, I am drawn to it. For a long moment, they stood there, the forest holding its breath, the pups at their feet unaware of the weight of destiny gathering around them. Then, with a movement both sudden and graceful, the Alpha King extended a hand. Tomorrow, he said softly. You will not be left unguarded. The ceremony approaches, and you may find yourself in a place you cannot yet imagine. She hesitated, a mix of wonder and fear coursing through her. I don't understand. He allowed a shadow of a smile to touch his lips. You will. But for now, stay with them. His eyes softened, dark yet shimmering with unspoken emotion. Let them trust you. Let me learn why I do the same. With that, he turned, vanishing into the forest shadows like a storm retreating into the night, leaving the woman alone with the pups. But now her thoughts were no longer only with the small creatures. They lingered on the Alpha King, the weight of his presence, and the strange pull of destiny that had reached out to her without warning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and violet, she felt a tremor of unease mixed with anticipation. Tomorrow, the ceremony would begin, and the world she had known, small, safe, and simple, would collide with a kingdom steeped in power, tradition, and secrets older than the forest itself. The pups yipped, nudging her hands and curling against her legs, their innocence a fragile shield against the storm approaching. And somewhere deep within the darkened forest, the Alpha King paused, listening to the whispers of wind through the trees, haunted by the knowledge that his life and his heart had been irrevocably changed. The first stars appeared in the night sky, cold and bright against the dark canopy, and in the shadows, both of them knew the world would never be the same again. The morning air was thick with the scent of burning torches and damp earth, carrying the weight of expectation. The kingdom stirred with a strange, tense energy. Servants moved quickly, robes swishing across polished stone floors. Nobles whispered in the shadows, their eyes sharp and calculating. Every corner of the castle hummed with anticipation, for today was the day of the mating ceremony, a tradition that had lasted for generations, binding power, loyalty, and lineage. In the quiet clearing beyond the castle walls, the young woman knelt once again among the Alpha King's pups. Their playfulness had not dimmed, even as the world beyond the forest seemed poised on the edge of ceremony and conflict. She laughed softly as a pup tumbled onto her lap, wagging its tail like a flag in the wind. "You're all going to get into trouble if you keep this up," she said, brushing fur from its tiny ears. "But I suppose trouble is better than loneliness." A soft rustle behind her made her pause. She turned and found herself face to face with the Alpha King, emerging from the shadows as if he had been carved from them. His eyes were dark, unreadable, yet softened slightly by the light of the morning sun. "You should not be here," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle, but with the edge of command beneath it. "The ceremony begins soon, and the court does not forgive those who wander where they are not meant." "I am not afraid," she said simply, meeting his gaze. "And neither are they." She gestured to the pups, who nuzzled and yipped around her feet. He studied her closely, his brow furrowed. "You do not understand the danger. Not from the pups, but from the world outside this clearing. People watch, and not all are kind. Some would see your care as a challenge to the order, to the hierarchy we maintain." She hesitated. I do not care for the court, or the ceremony. I care for them, and if they are in danger, I would protect them." A shadow passed over his face, something heavy and sorrowful. "Protection is a dangerous thing in my world," he said. "Those who protect can be used, betrayed, or even destroyed. Yet, I see courage in you. A courage I have long thought dead in this kingdom." Her heart skipped. His words carried weight beyond explanation, as if they brushed against a secret part of her own soul. "Courage is not always loud," she whispered. "Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is gentle." He took a step closer, and the forest seemed to lean in, holding its breath. "Gentle," he repeated softly, almost to himself. "Gentleness has a power of its own, one I have not witnessed in decades." The sound of a horn in the distance broke the spell. The court was gathering, its power and expectation reaching even into the forest. The Alpha King's expression darkened, a mask of responsibility and burden settling over his features. "You must leave soon," he said, his voice now sharper, urgent. "Once the ceremony begins, the world beyond this clearing will not tolerate your presence. You may not understand it yet, but your fate may be entangled with mine, more than you realize." She looked at him, confused and intrigued. "My fate? What do you mean?" He shook his head slightly, as though the weight of centuries rested on his shoulders. "There are forces in this kingdom ancient and unyielding that bind me, and anyone who draws near, to paths we do not choose. Your bond with the pups, it is not random. It awakens something within me, something dangerous, something alive." Her hands instinctively touched the fur of a pup curled against her lap. "I do not understand," she said softly. "But I do know that I cannot leave them. Not while they need me." He watched her, his expression torn. "You possess a strength few have, and a heart that few dare to notice. Yet the world will test you, and I cannot always shield you." The pups whined, sensing the tension in the air. They crawled toward the Alpha King, their small bodies brushing against his boots. For a moment, he knelt, letting them nuzzle his hands. Even his shadowed eyes softened. He had long believed that showing care was a weakness, yet here, in their innocent trust, he found a glimmer of something he had thought lost forever. "You are reckless," he said quietly, rising to his full, commanding height. "Yet, perhaps, recklessness is needed in a world so bound by rules and fear." She looked up at him, noticing for the first time the subtle tension in his jaw, the shadow of pain behind his dark eyes. "I am not reckless," she said gently. "I am guided by what I believe is right." A slow, unreadable smile touched his lips. "Perhaps that is what frightens me most," he admitted, his voice low. "Not that you would fail, but that you would succeed where others cannot, that you might awaken in me something I have buried for too long." Before she could respond, a sharp cry echoed through the forest. One of the pups had wandered too close to the edge. where the shadows of the trees became dense and foreboding. She sprang forward, scooping the pup into her arms. "Careful," she scolded softly, hugging it close. The Alpha King's gaze followed her every movement, unblinking. In the simplicity of this act, he saw courage, compassion, and defiance, qualities the court rarely rewarded but that the heart secretly craved. "You are already changing the order of this kingdom," he said quietly, "and yet you do not even know it." A sudden noise from the forest edge drew their attention. Servants and courtiers had begun arriving, their footsteps deliberate and watchful. The young woman's heart beat faster. The clearing, once a place of safety and freedom, now felt like a fragile island amid an encroaching sea of expectation and authority. "You must go," the Alpha King said, his voice firmer now. "The ceremony will begin, and it is not a place for those unprepared. You have strength, but the world outside this clearing is harsh. You may not survive it unscathed." She met his gaze steadily. "I will survive. I will protect them. And I will learn what you are afraid to show." He felt a pull in his chest, an unfamiliar ache. No one had ever spoken to him with such quiet defiance, such steady courage. Most bent beneath his authority, fearing the weight of his rule. She did not. She challenged him, gently, without words, without rebellion, simply by being herself. For a moment, he wondered if it was folly to allow her this closeness. Yet, the pull of her presence, the warmth of her heart, and the softness in her courage were too potent to deny. "Tomorrow," he said finally, lowering his voice, "you will see the world of the court, the ceremony, and all that it demands. You may find yourself in danger, tested in ways you cannot imagine. Do not be unprepared." She nodded, holding a pup tightly in her arms. "I will be ready," she said. "I promise." A soft breeze stirred the trees, carrying with it the scent of smoke and incense from the distant ceremonial grounds. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the clearing. The Alpha King's gaze lingered on her as she carefully gathered the pups, guiding them deeper into the safety of the forest. His heart was heavy, burdened by duty, tradition, and the knowledge that letting her enter the world of the court would be like releasing a bird into a storm. Yet, beneath the weight of responsibility, a fragile hope stirred, a hope that she might not only survive, but awaken something in him that he had thought forever lost. Trust, tenderness, and perhaps even love. As the first torches flickered in the gathering dusk, signaling the court's preparation for the ceremony, he turned back toward the shadows, watching her disappear into the trees. The pups yipped and whined softly, reluctant to leave her side, as if even they understood the danger that lay ahead. The forest fell quiet once more, save for the distant murmurs of the castle and the soft whines of the pups. The Alpha King's mind was a storm of duty and desire. Tomorrow, the ceremony would begin. Tomorrow, tradition and power would collide with courage and heart. And tomorrow, choices would be made that could change the kingdom forever. For now, he stood alone in the forest, the wind tugging at his cloak, shadows deepening around him, and the knowledge settling in his chest that the young woman's presence had already begun to alter the course of his life. The night crept in, cool and silent, and in the distance, a horn sounded once more, a reminder that the world of the court awaited, full of rules, intrigue, and expectations. And somewhere, deep in the Alpha King's chest, a spark of something dangerous and unyielding flickered to life. Desire, protection, and the faintest whisper of hope. Night had fallen over the kingdom, draping the ceremonial grounds in silver and shadow. The air was sharp with anticipation, and torches flickered like distant stars along the stone pathways. The court moved like a living tide, their whispered intrigues echoing in the corridors. Masks of courtesy hid ambition, desire, and caution. Every noble, every attendant, was aware of the Alpha King's presence. Yet few truly understood the weight he bore, the burden of duty intertwined with a curse that had haunted his family for generations. Beyond the walls of the castle, in the quiet of the forest, the young woman knelt once more among the Alpha King's pups. She had grown accustomed to their warmth and playfulness, finding comfort in their innocence. Yet, tonight, she could not ignore the uneasy tension pressing in from the world beyond the trees. A soft rustle alerted her, and she turned to see the Alpha King stepping from the shadows, his cloak brushing against the fallen leaves. His face was more solemn than before, shadowed not by night alone, but by the heavy weight of thought. "They are restless tonight," he said softly, his eyes scanning the playful pups, as if they sensed the trials to come. "They always sense more than we do," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face as she scooped up a pup that had wandered too far. "They feel danger, and yet they are fearless. Perhaps we could learn from them." A flicker of a smile touched his lips, brief and hesitant. Fearless. Yes. And yet the world outside this clearing rarely allows such innocence to endure. She met his gaze, courage blooming in her chest. "Then perhaps we must protect it, not with strength alone, but with care, with attention, with heart. That is the power the court cannot take from us." He regarded her silently, as if weighing her words against a lifetime of caution and command. Finally, he spoke, voice lower, edged with a vulnerability he seldom revealed. "There is more at stake than you understand," he admitted. "My family, our bloodline is cursed. Every attempt at love, every bond forged by the heart, carries with it a shadow of betrayal, suffering, or loss. That is why I keep my distance. That is why I trust few and reveal less." Her hands froze mid-motion, holding the small pup tightly. "A curse?" she whispered. "But the pups, they are alive and happy. You can choose to protect what you care for." He shook his head slowly. "Protection has a cost. I have lost those I cared for most because I dared to hope, dared to trust. And each time, the curse reminded me of its power. I promised myself I would never let it happen again." She stepped closer, her eyes soft, yet unwavering. "And yet, here you are, trusting me, even a little." His gaze softened, but the shadow of his past lingered. "Trust. Yes, perhaps, but it terrifies me. To allow myself to care, to feel, is to risk everything. And yet, I cannot deny the pull I feel toward you. It is unlike anything I have known. And it frightens me more than the court, more than the curse itself." Her heart ached at his confession. "You are not alone," she said gently. "I feel it too. The connection, it is there. Whether we understand it or not, we can face it together." A gust of wind stirred the leaves, carrying with it the distant hum of the ceremony. The sound was a reminder of the world that waited beyond the forest, the obligations and traditions that demanded obedience, sacrifice, and sometimes cruelty. "You will be tested tomorrow," he said quietly, "and I cannot always protect you. The court, they will not forgive deviation, even when guided by courage or heart." "I do not wish to be forgiven," she replied softly. "I wish only to stand where I am needed, to help where I can, and to see what is true." He studied her, his mind torn between the heavy weight of duty and the fragile hope her words inspired. "True, yes. The truth is difficult in my kingdom. Loyalty, love, power, they are all intertwined in ways that can destroy as easily as they sustain. And yet, perhaps you are the one who can remind me what it is to feel without fear." They moved silently through the clearing, the pups trailing behind them. Each step carried both comfort and unease, the innocence of the moment tempered by the awareness of what awaited them. The forest, once a refuge, now felt like the threshold to a world that demanded courage and strength beyond ordinary measure. The Alpha King stopped, looking down at her with eyes that were both stern and tender. "There is something you must know," he said. "The curse, it is not only my own. It lingers in the bloodline, affecting those I care for deeply. Anyone who becomes close, anyone who awakens emotion in me, is touched by it, whether they understand or not. That is why I warned you yesterday, and why I cannot allow you to step into the court unprepared." She did not flinch. "Then I will be prepared. I will not fear it. I will face whatever comes with courage, and I will trust that you will face it too." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft breathing of the pups and the rustle of leaves. Finally, he nodded, as if her words had anchored something long adrift in his heart. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice firm but quieter than usual, "the ceremony will begin. The court will judge. The nobles will scheme. And the rules of tradition will press upon us all. You may find that your courage, your heart, and your loyalty will be tested in ways you cannot imagine." "I am ready," she said, her voice steady. "I will not step back." He regarded her for a moment longer, a mixture of admiration and worry in his gaze. "Then we shall face it together," he said finally. Though even as he spoke, he knew the challenges ahead could shatter the fragile hope forming between them. The night deepened, stars shimmering like distant eyes watching over the forest and the kingdom. Somewhere in the shadows, figures moved, silently spies, nobles, attendants, sent to test loyalty, to observe, to manipulate. The young woman's courage, the Alpha King's vulnerability, and the pup's innocence were not safe from those who saw opportunity in their bond. Suddenly, a rustling sound reached their ears. The Alpha King's hand went to the hilt of a ceremonial dagger. Instinct sharp and ready. From the shadows, a figure emerged, masked and cloaked, silent yet deliberate. The woman instinctively stepped back, holding the pups close. "You should not be here," the figure said, voice low and measured, carrying authority that rivaled the Alpha King's own. "This place is not yours. The ceremony, it begins soon, and intruders are unwelcome." The Alpha King stepped forward, placing himself between the figure and the woman. "She is no intruder," he said firmly. "She belongs here as much as any noble, perhaps more. She has proven courage, loyalty, and heart qualities that this court has forgotten." The figure paused, evaluating him, then inclined their head with subtle respect. "We shall see if your choice is wise," they said. With that, the shadowy figure melted back into the darkness, leaving a tension that lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. The young woman exhaled slowly, holding the pups tightly. "Who was that?" she asked. "A messenger of the court," he replied, his voice low, troubled. "They test all who approach, all who could challenge the traditions. Tomorrow, their judgment will fall upon you as well as upon me." She met his eyes, unwavering. "Then we shall face it. Together." He nodded, but the shadow of fear lingered in his gaze. "Yes, together. Yet know this, the court is only the beginning. The curse, it has ways of testing us beyond their understanding, and it is relentless." For a long while, they stood in silence, surrounded by the pups, the whispering forest, and the encroaching darkness. Even in the quiet, the weight of destiny pressed upon them, the challenge of love, trust, courage, and the unseen chains of a curse that neither could yet fully comprehend. And yet, beneath the weight of uncertainty, a fragile spark of hope glimmered, a promise that even in a world ruled by tradition, power, and fear, heart and courage could still shape destiny. The first distant horn of the approaching ceremony echoed through the forest, sharp and clear. The Alpha King's gaze hardened, and the young woman's pulse quickened. Tomorrow, their lives would change. Tomorrow, courage, heart, and loyalty would be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. And somewhere in the shadows, the curse stirred, watching, waiting, ready to challenge them both. The first light of dawn crept over the kingdom, painting the sky in streaks of amber and violet. The ceremonial grounds, once silent and foreboding, now buzzed with movement. Servants scurried along stone pathways, torches flickered in the early haze, and nobles in ceremonial robes whispered in anticipation. Today, the mating ceremony would take place, a ritual that bound alliances, power, and lineage, and tested courage, loyalty, and heart. The young woman stood at the edge of the forest, the Alpha King by her side. The pups huddled at her feet, their tiny forms warm against the chill of morning. She could feel the weight of destiny pressing upon them, yet also a strange sense of resolve. She had chosen to face this world, to step beyond the clearing of comfort and into a kingdom of rules, tradition, and expectation. The Alpha King's gaze swept across the ceremonial grounds, sharp and commanding. He had prepared for countless rituals in his life, but none had felt as perilous as this, not because of the ceremony itself, but because of what it represented: the exposure of his heart, the vulnerability of trust, and the fragile bond he had forged with the woman who now stood at his side. "You are ready," he said quietly, his voice carrying both authority and reassurance. "Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Today, they will test us, the court, and perhaps even the curse itself." She nodded, her hands tightening gently around the pups. "I am ready. We face it together." As they stepped onto the stone path leading to the ceremonial platform, the court fell silent. Eyes that had once been indifferent now watched with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and awe. The nobles whispered among themselves, sensing that this ceremony would not follow tradition entirely, that something extraordinary was unfolding. The Alpha King moved with quiet strength, his presence commanding yet tempered by the vulnerability he allowed himself to reveal in small, careful ways. He placed a protective hand on the young woman's shoulder, a silent reassurance that he would stand by her, no matter what trials awaited. The ceremony began with the ringing of a great bell, its deep tones vibrating through the kingdom and into the forest. Attendants carried ceremonial objects. Flames flickered in golden braziers, and the air seemed thick with ancient energy. Every noble, every observer, waited for the customary displays of power, dominance, and adherence to tradition. Yet the young woman and the Alpha King moved with a quiet defiance, guided not by tradition alone, but by courage, loyalty, and the bond they had forged. The Alpha King stepped forward, placing the woman gently beside him on the ceremonial platform. Murmurs spread through the court, some skeptical, some intrigued, all aware that something extraordinary was happening. "You will witness something today," the Alpha King said softly, his voice carrying across the platform. "Not just the ceremony, but the strength of heart, the courage of loyalty, and the power of trust. These are forces older than any crown, older than any law, and they are not to be underestimated." A hush fell over the crowd as the ceremony unfolded. Nobles attempted to sway the proceedings with whispered suggestions, subtle gestures, and careful manipulation. But the Alpha King and the young woman remained unshaken. The pups tumbled playfully at their feet, a symbol of innocence and courage, reminding all who watched that, even in a world ruled by power and tradition, gentleness and heart held their own strength. Then, a sudden challenge arose. One of the nobles, a man known for his ambition and cunning, stepped forward, questioning the young woman's right to be part of the ceremony. "She is not of our blood," he said, voice sharp and commanding. "She cannot claim a place here. This tradition, our legacy, must be preserved." The Alpha King's eyes darkened, his hand resting lightly but firmly on the ceremonial hilt at his side. "Legacy is more than blood," he said, voice carrying across the platform like a tide of steel and fire. "Legacy is courage. Legacy is heart. Legacy is the choice to act when fear seeks to bind us. She has proven all three, and I choose to stand with her." A murmur rippled through the court. Some nobles scowled, others whispered in astonishment, but all recognized the weight of his declaration. He was not only defying tradition but reshaping it, reminding them that power was not merely inherited, but earned through courage, loyalty, and love. The young woman felt a surge of strength as she met his gaze. In that moment, fear and doubt fell away. She realized that courage was not measured by physical might, or cunning, but by the willingness to act for what was right, even when the world demanded conformity. She held the pups close, feeling their warmth and trust, and knew that their innocence symbolized the possibility of change, the hope that even the hardest hearts could be softened. The challenge continued, subtle but relentless. Spells of testing and subtle curses, remnants of the family's ancient legacy, sought to unravel the bond between them. Shadows moved unnaturally. Whispers of magic tugged at the edges of reality, and the very ground seemed to pulse with the weight of expectation. Yet together, the Alpha King and the young woman faced it all. She stood tall beside him, her courage unyielding. He acted with measured strength, guiding and protecting, but also allowing himself the vulnerability of trust and affection. Each step, each gesture, each word reinforced their bond, creating a force stronger than any tradition, stronger than any curse. And then, at the height of the ceremony, the curse itself revealed its power. A flash of shadow that sought to separate them, to test the strength of heart and loyalty. The Alpha King's eyes blazed with determination, and he reached for the young woman's hand. "Do not fear," he said firmly. "We face this together. Whatever it brings, we endure, as one." The shadow pulsed, dark and threatening, but the courage radiating from them both, the trust and bond they shared, created a light that pushed it back. Slowly, the darkness receded, defeated not by force alone, but by the power of heart, loyalty, and love that the curse had underestimated. The court watched in stunned silence. Some bowed their heads in respect, others whispered in disbelief. But all could see that something extraordinary had occurred. Tradition and power had been challenged, and a bond stronger than either had prevailed. The Alpha King turned to the young woman, eyes softened with relief, pride, and something more tender, something he had thought he could never allow himself to feel. "You have proven your courage," he said, voice low and sincere. "And in doing so, you have transformed not only this ceremony but my heart." She smiled, a mixture of awe and joy. "And you have shown me that even the most powerful can be gentle, that strength and heart can coexist." He took her hand, the gesture simple yet profound, a public acknowledgement of a bond that had been tested and endured. The pups tumbled happily at their feet, their innocent joy a silent celebration of victory, courage, and love. For the first time in decades, the Alpha King felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The curse, while still present in the world, had been weakened, not defeated entirely, but softened by the strength of their bond, by courage, loyalty, and the willingness to act with heart. The young woman looked around the ceremonial grounds, seeing the court in a new light. They were not merely obstacles or challengers. They were witnesses to a force older and more powerful than tradition. The strength of the human heart, and the courage to act when fear and expectation demanded obedience. Together, she and the Alpha King stepped down from the platform, the pups following eagerly. The crowd parted respectfully, recognizing that this day had changed the kingdom. Power, tradition, and legacy had not disappeared, but they had been reshaped by courage, loyalty, and love. The Alpha King paused at the edge of the clearing, looking out toward the forest. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "There will always be challenges, tests, and shadows that seek to undo what we have built. But together, we endure. Together, we are stronger than any curse, any expectation, any tradition." She nodded, holding the pups close. "Then we face the future together," she said firmly. "No matter what comes, we face it as one." A gentle breeze swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of earth, fire, and wildflowers. The first rays of the sun broke fully over the horizon, casting a golden glow on the kingdom, the ceremonial grounds, and the forest beyond. Shadows receded, light prevailed, and for the first time, the Alpha King allowed himself to hope not just for the kingdom, but for the fragile, powerful, and enduring bond he shared with the woman who had changed everything. The pups yipped and tumbled, playful and joyful, as if celebrating not only the ceremony but the courage and heart that had carried them through. The court watched quietly, some with respect, some with awe, but all understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. A union not only of hearts, but of courage, trust, and transformation. The Alpha King and the young woman walked hand in hand, the pups at their feet, through the clearing toward the forest. Each step was a promise. To protect, to care, to face the future together. The curse might linger. Tradition might still demand loyalty, but their bond was now a force stronger than fear, stronger than expectation, stronger than destiny itself. And somewhere deep in the forest, the whispers of magic stirred, as if acknowledging that a bond forged through courage and heart could never truly be undone.